Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Reindeer Roundup 2023. I'm so glad that you guys decided to come paint with me. I love to hand letter and paint. So you guys know I'm Kimberly Sminky. I'm an artist, a modern calligrapher, became a widow in my early 40s and found the healing power of creating. So join me today. We're going to paint this sweet little reindeer. I think I named her Leanna. I believe that was um, light, meant light, right? So that's why I fell in love with that little name. So I hope that you've all had a chance to print your tracer. If not, head over. There's still time. You can do that now. I'm trying to figure out why my lighting is showing so orange. So let me fiddle with that just a little bit more. I don't know why it just looks so orange to me. But we may just roll with it. Maybe it's pulling off of the table background. But I'm not going to mess with it too much more here. Let's see. Just when I thought it was better, it's not. All right, so we're just going to roll with it. Guys, I've printed off my tracer. I've got the small tracer. You saw the big canvas. You've got the tracer for that one as well. I showed in the live how to put that together and be ready, but we're going to use the 8x10 size, and we are going to paint on this wood blank from Not Just Frames. It's a birch wood blank. We're going to paint on that. We've got the supply list here. I've got my tracer. If you want to use, there's many ways to put your tracer patterns on your wood. You can use carbon paper like I'm going to do, but we've got to get this going first. And I don't want to waste a whole lot of time because she's just too stinking cute, right? So let me make sure. I think we can see everything and we can see everything well. I'm going to pull my chair up. I've got a little assortment of brushes over here, everything from like a 3/4 inch down to smaller ones. I have some round brushes. Use what you got. I'm a huge proponent of that. For the background, we're going to use a mix of our blues. So I've got Royal Navy. I'm just going to get a little bit of that. We are going to use a good bit of white. So I've got the Deco Art colors here. Everything is on your supply list. The supply list link will be in the description box if you have not gotten it yet. And I'm going to take just a little bit of this shoreline blue. So I've got a lot of white, a little bit of shoreline, and a little bit of navy. We may add a little bit of black around the edges. But doing this is pretty much, what makes you happy. So I'm going to take my brush, I'm going to wet it, and then just tap it off on a paper towel. I don't mind. I want it to be a good little bit wet. And we're just going to pick up some. I've already went and base coated my wood white, right? So this way we can get started. And I'm about half. I'm already getting started with the background. So I'm just going to take a good bit of that white and put it all over like the middle of my tag. Okay. And I'm just putting it on there really quickly, haphazardly, kind of crisscrossing it, getting messy with it. I'm going to dip into my shoreline and I'm just going to put a few swipes of that shoreline kind of in a circle around the white. Now I'm going to dip into my navy and I'm going to come out on the edges around here with my edges with the navy. And I want to work pretty quickly. And I also have a mister of water. If I need the mister, you want to keep the paints wet. The humidity here is very low. And by working with the paint wet, and then you start blending it together. Now you can work it around in a nice little oval. or you can just get all haphazard with it. Whatever kind of, look, painting, you should paint to make yourself happy, right? So don't be afraid to change anything on this tutorial. Add little things, change colors. You know, that was another thing. If you do not have the exact colors, don't let that stop you. Just substitute what you have, right? So I'm keeping the darker blue around the edges. Not too worried about my table. This will wipe right up when I'm done. I'm dipping into some water and I'm coming back onto the tag. If the paint is wet, it will blend. If it's drying, of course, be a little harder to blend. You can add some more white in here, but don't get too stressed about your background. Right, little Leanna the reindeer is going to go on our background. So this is just kind of that bit of the piece that you just play with until you feel happy. Now I just picked up some more water and you'll see I'm just kind of making little X crisscrosses with my brush and blending it a little bit because I like that soft sort of blended almost ombre look. I'm just dipping back into my navy, dipping into this mid-range blue. I can add in some more white. And as long as the paint, again, is still wet, you can continue to blend the colors. All right, so I'm going to finish this corner here. Off my navy. If you want that really dark, like midnight blue, get some black like I just did there on the brush and mix it in with your blues. I just picked up a little bit more water again. And I'm going to try to remember not to go off the edge and keep myself centered here. It just doesn't seem like I can keep myself centered very well in the camera. But that's okay. So I'm just going to make sure everything there is nice and smooth and blended. And then we're going to let it dry. Okay. You can come in here and sort of kind of make the look of hills with the white. You can add, just go over it with some more white. I'm not worrying about making it perfect. I want that blue to show through. And I kind of wanted to keep that dark edge a little bit darker, but we're not going to stress, right? So if I'm bringing my hill this way and I want to bring a hill this way, and the more you just move that brush around, the blue will pick up and blend in into your white. And it just kind of gives some depth to your snow drifts. All right, so we want to stop for a minute at this point, guys, and make sure we're good and dry before we move on, right? Because when we want to transfer this over, just going to get a new look at that view. All right, she's going to go in here. So like I said, don't stress too much about your edges, and freshen up and clean your water as needed. Just have some paper towels here off to the side. Okay, so I'm just going to get a little bit more of my blue, and there were some spots here that did not blend very well. Okay, so I can just come in and just kind of soften that in a bit, just barely touching with my brush. Can lift it. Okay. Either mist or add some water if you don't like the blend that you're getting. And as long as the two colors are wet, you can keep on blending, right? So I'm going to set this aside while it's drying. I want to show you a paint technique that I'm going to use in this, in some areas. I do a lot of my painting with this technique. So I want to show you this really quickly, but I'm going to clean my brush. I hope everybody's good. We made it through Thanksgiving, Black Friday. If you're watching this at a later date, yes, we painted her to kick off our Christmas holidays. Okay. This is a working house, so you'll hear laughter of my children from time to time. Hopefully not any barking dogs, but there are no guarantees of that. So I'm just going to take my supply list and flip it over. I want to show you a paint technique that we are going to be using to paint the reindeer here. So I want to keep moving, but to give that time to dry. So I'm going to grab some of my brown, just one of the darker browns, and I'm going to just use a little bit of the white since I already have it on here. I'm going to show you to double load the brush. So a flat brush. If you turn it one way, it's very skinny. If you turn it over, it's nice and flat. All right, so I'm going to take and imagine you're cutting this brush in half, right? The bristles of the brush in half. So I'm going to turn it and dip half of the brush in the brown and the other side into the white. So it's loaded with two colors, a double load. Then when I blend it here on my palette, those two colors will start to blend, right? You can see that where it's starting to blend here in the center. Then when you go over to paint things, you can paint, and that is a double load of the brush. So I'm going to clean that, and we're going to make sure she's nice and dry, and we're going to move on. Give me just a second, and we'll be moving on. Nice and dry, so let's get ready to transfer. I have some carbon paper. I'm just going to try to carefully get her on the wood block. Right, so the carbon has a shiny side, a dull side. Shiny side is going to go to the side that you want it to show up on. So I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to center her about where I want her. Okay, so I think right about there is good. And then I'm going to just slide my carbon paper in between. Okay, she came off just a bit, but let's put the carbon paper on. We're going to try to center her as best we can. Grab a pen or a pencil. I've got my pen, and I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to trace my main lines. Hands are a little bit unsteady, not a big deal. Right, so we're just going to trace her in there. Get the little hair pieces, her antlers. I'm going to trace everything on here. So just take your time. If you need to turn the video off, come back. That's fine. If you ever need to pause and come back, that is also fine. I'm going to kind of wing it when it comes up here to the Christmas lights, but you can take your time Trace them on. I mean, she's not a super quick painting, but we're painting her small. So hopefully painting smaller, I mean, sometimes it can be a little bit more stressful than painting large, but it shouldn't take quite as much time. Okay, so I'm just getting those traced in there, and her little cheek I'll put in very lightly. We're going to cover it up anyway. Now let's see, I'm going to get her tail. I'm not worrying about being perfect. We can kind of straighten our lines a little bit as we paint. Her little belly, her front leg. Okay, so just keep tracing, tracing, tracing. And we could always simplify her. We don't have to get as detailed with our wreath around the neck. We might simplify that just a little bit for the sake of time. Before I lift, I like to pull back and make sure there are no parts that I need to go over again. But I think that we are good at this point. So we're going to move on. All right. So let's get our paints out. I like to start here in the center. So I'm going to grab my palette, just a paper plate, nothing fancy. I'm going to use my browns, fawn, honey brown, and then we're going to use milk chocolate. And we're also going to use a little bit of buttermilk and white. So we have our white. I'm going to put some fawn here. I love this color, fawn. But please feel free to use whatever browns that you might have. Do not ever let the fact that you don't have the exact colors keep you from creating. Use what you have and have fun doing it. So I'm just putting all of these colors here. Okay, and then I'm just going to grab a brush, wet it, take some of the water off. Okay, and let's get us set up here. Move some of these colors over. I'm going to put my palette here. So I'm going to be working small, so I probably won't need any of these really big brushes that I brought in. So, but anyway, I'm just going to grab a small brush, whatever brush you feel comfortable with. I'm going to take buttermilk first, and I'm just going to come in here. This part, guys, is like painting or coloring in a coloring book. You're just using one single color. You're going to try to get a nice smooth coat, right? Even if you have to do 2 coats, do small, thin coats. And it will just look so much better on the finished piece than if you just like threw 10 tons of paint on there just to get it covered up. Okay. And it doesn't take quite as long to dry. So we're just going to cover that muzzle of the deer in that really pretty light fawn color. Okay, I am going to come down here right in the middle of her chest and just put like a little circle of the fawn there and let it dry. I'm also going to come up in the middle of this ear. I did not, with my tracer, hit the middle of the ear, but I'm going to fill in that middle part of the ear with fawn just to give me a nice little base coat, right? So this is nothing more than as if you were picking up crayons and painting or coloring in a coloring book. You're just filling in flat color. So now I have that same brush, it's still dirty. I'm going to dip back into my buttermilk, but I'm just going to tip into my fawn, right? And I'm going to come in here now and I'm just going to blend those two colors in the long strokes that kind of will mimic hair. You can get as light or as dark as you want, but I'm picking up just a little bit of fawn with the buttermilk, and you'll see, I hope you can see that. If it gets a little too dark, dip back into your buttermilk, just play with the colors, right? So that's going to create that little bit of interest, of depth that, and you can do the same down here. I'm just kind of brushing those colors. I'm not going to worry about the ear because the inner ear is going to be pink. I'm not even going to clean my brush at this point. Now I'm going to come up here into my honey brown and we're going to go over and color in. We are just going to fill in all of the other little parts of the deer. Her ear, her head. We're just going to fill all that in now with this honey brown. I'm just using the tip of this little brush to get in the tight spots. And just like coloring, we are just going to color in all of those little areas. Don't forget your ear. Okay, so I'm just using the tip of the brush to fill in the ear. And I'm just using the tip of that brush where those little points of her hair come out on the tracer. I'm just going to continue filling those areas in with one color. It's that honey brown. And then I'm going to come down below and we're going to do the same. We're going to come right in under her chin. I'm going to just go down the sides of her neck as if the wreath isn't even going to go there, right? I'm just going to paint her as if the wreath is not even there. So I'm going to do both legs, just going around that sort of little lighter spot that we put in the center of her chest. Just using that flat part of the brush. To just paint that whole bit in there. So the same here, let me turn just a bit. So I'm going to use the tip of that brush to get in those tight spots. And I'm going to just pull back on the tip to give me those points of where like the hair kind of shoots up. And you can do a few of those little pieces. You can always adjust your tail. It does not have to be exact. Okay, let me make sure we're still in the camera. We're good. I'm just going to continue filling that in. So we are just going to block that whole body in with the honey brown. Just one little more spot here. So when you are happy and have everything color blocked in, you know, take a look at your painting and make sure you've got all of your areas that are filled in with the color. Okay, and they are. So I'm going to now use the same brush. I don't have a lot of paint left on it. I'm going to pick up a little tiny bit of that honey brown again. Okay, I don't want a lot. I just want to know that there's paint on my brush. Remember that double load. We're going to turn the brush on the side and dip into the fawn. Fawn to the outside part of the deer. We are just going to start following around the outer part of her head. And we can lighten up. We can just come right on through her antler there. Right, but it's the lighter brown is mixing in with the fawn. And if it's not light enough, dip the side of the brush in the white. Keep the white to the outer edge. So I'm going to start here and come up around and continue right across and lift. And I'm just going to blend some of that right on in. Doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just picking up some more honey and some more white on that brush. I'm going to do the same. I'm going to do a little circle with the lighter color facing upward. I'm going to just draw or follow that around to give that curve of her antler coming out of her head. So I'll bring that up so you can see it. Okay, I'm going to do the same here around the back side of her head. A little bit of fawn, a little bit of white on the other side of the brush, and we can pull that right on down. It gives us that little bit of highlight. Don't be afraid to come in here and just blend the rest of that color. It's just going to give you movement. You can always come back in and paint over if you don't like something that you've just done. Now, this is where it's going to get a little bit tricky. So I'm going to use a round brush that has somewhat of a good tip on it. I'm going to dip a little bit into my honey, just a little into honey. And then I'm going to dip either into fawn or into the white, just a little bit on that brush. A little bit on the tip. When I come in here, we're going to outline the outer edge of her ear. So we're going to come up just kind of on the outline of that ear, over, around, and we're going to lift it. I can come in with some honey and blend those two colors in a little bit better. If your color is wet, you can blend. But don't get too caught up in perfection or you won't have fun, right? So you want some of those streaks in there. It's going to give you the look of hair. So we're just going to tip the brush, pull up with the white is on there. We've got the honey and a little bit of white again. We're going to pull up and out. We're lifting to create that look of a piece of hair. And then we'll just come in with the brush, blend them just a bit. And we can do the curl of her ear with the white or the fawn, whatever you want to paint it. Right, so we're just using the tip of the brush to make those little curls of hair. But as long as your colors are wet, you can continue to blend. If you don't like something you did, let it dry. Paint over it again. I want my to be just a little bit lighter around the edges. And then we're going to come and do the same to this ear here. So I'm just going to fill in with a little bit of honey. I'm going to go over and put like a little bit of a second coat there with the round brush. A little bit of honey. Now I'm going to dip very little bit white, and I'm just going to go over the edges of the ear. And as that blends in to the honey that we just put on there, it will all blend together. We can also just come in here and do our little curl of the ear. Okay, so that's highlighted there. We can also take this round brush. We can come in and just flick little lines going in the direction that the hair would grow. We can alternate the different colors. Fawn, I'll throw some fawn in here. And I'm going to dip into a little bit of this darker brown now. So right above that little muzzle of her face, I'm going to start blending in honey. We can always come back and base the honey, because if our base is wet, we can blend colors into it. Now I've got that darker brown. I'm just going to keep blending that darker honey brown, or that darker, what is it? It is the milk chocolate. We're going to blend that milk chocolate in and just keep playing with it until you're happy. Okay, I'm going to flip back and forth between the chocolate and the honey. We're just going to create some little hair strokes to blend that all together. And right up here under the ear, I'm coming in with honey. And right on top of the honey, I'm going to put a good bit of that dark chocolate brown, because I want to create a nice little shadow. And as I pull down away from the ear, we want that to lighten up, and just keep blending it out. Don't be afraid to come back in with your honey again. And you can do the same on this ear, this side of the ear. You can also do it right around there. Don't forget to do the base of this ear, and then just blend it up with some honey brown. So we're flip-flopping between those colors. You can also get some of that chocolate now and come up in the ear a little bit. Right? So you want those 2-3 colors just all blending together. If you get a spot and you're not real thrilled with it, I'm going to come back in here with some of this buttermilk, and I'm going to lighten up my edge again. This is what I say about paint. It's very forgiving. Don't be afraid to play and experiment. You know, the only difference between my painting and your painting is that I have allowed myself 40 plus years to mess up and to learn. That's the only difference between me and you, is the amount of time and the amount of mess ups that I've made to get to where I am now, right? So we're going to repeat the same sort of back and forth with the colors down here at the body. So our honey, and you want to go back in. I like to just go back in and put just another coat on, right? Because I like to work wet. I like the paint to be wet, and then I put another coat of wet paint on top of that. So I'm going to dip a little bit into my white, and just like I did around the ears, I'm going to do the same thing here at the tail. I don't have a whole lot of white on my brush, just a little, and I can just see how I can blend that now down into the tail, and I can soften it. Just don't get a whole lot of paint on your brush at one time. You can just keep coming in, and I can lighten up the whole tail now, right? By pulling that white in through the honey. I can add some more honey in now to the center to make it darker. I can use the tip of that brush now and accentuate that little curve at the end of her tail. And don't be afraid to to have some fun, right? The tip of the tail can be as curly as you want it to be, right? Let it get big. Who cares? It's your painting. We're going to repeat the same steps. So I'm going to pick up, I just stuck my finger in it. We're going to pick up more honey brown. I'm going to wet this whole rump area and down these two legs again. I'm going to just work quickly because I want my paint to stay wet. Okay, I'm going to stay wet. Down here is more of a shadow, so we're going to go into the dark. We can even go really dark and use some of the bittersweet chocolate. So I'm going to get a little bit of that. See how dark that is? A little, very little bit of that. And when we go to blend it, we're going to go along the outside edges. And don't let this scare you because this will blend very easily. It will blend away very quickly, as a matter of fact, into the honey brown, right? So don't be afraid to use it. So we're going to stay towards the edges with that dark color and just blend in a little bit. You don't have to blend in as much. And then we're going to do the same right here where the other leg kind of tucks behind that one, right? The body and the leg. So we've got the brown. I'm going to blend that down a good bit. If it gets too dark there where it just did, I can blend some honey to soften it. If it starts to get really, really messy, muddy, let it dry and come back over it with your honey brown. Paint should not be that scary. You let it dry, right? So we're going to get right under his belly, that little line under the belly, and I'm going to blend that just very lightly, pulling the brush down. But I want to leave a nice crisp line right there where that back leg tucks in behind the body. And then I can get honey and pull that back up into it. And we can just keep blending those colors together until we're happy with the blend that we've got, right? So see how we're getting a nice blend. But this is where I really have some fun. Coming in here with my honey, wetting it again. I'm going to pick up some fawn now. Now everything, this top leg, now we want to create a highlight right next to where we made a shadow. So I'm going to add some light fawn to that bit of the leg and just blend it. I can do that all the way down her little back leg. I can put a little bit of that down here on the leg that's in the back. Okay. I'm going to come up and around her little rump here. I can bring some fawn. I can really come in here just like we did on the head and lighten her up with some buttermilk. We just want to blend those colors. We can really get her light and give a nice white highlight on the top part. Okay, and I'm going to pull that down. We're probably going to cover most of this up when we put her wreath on. But do you see how we're just coloring and mixing those colors together? I just put some white in there, and I'm fine with that. We're just going to blend, have some fun blending colors. So under her belly, I'm going to leave a little bit darker with the honey because, there'll be less shadow. But I am going to create just a few more streaks around her back leg. I'm just going to blend that until I'm happy, right? So we want this top leg to really stand out because it is light, and we can just bring that around till we're happy with it. So it's just playing. Just keep playing with your paint. Bring some honey in. And if you go too far, like I'm probably going to do, just come back in with your dark again and add your shadow back in. Okay. I got some dark here. I'm just going to add some dark here to this little front leg, the leg here to the outer side. Then I'm going to dip into my honey again. I'm just going to go and wet these legs with the honey. Just like we did with the rest of the body. The outer edge I want nice and light. So with my white, I'm going to lighten it, and I'm going to work down the center with a little strip of lighter paint, and you can just keep blending that. Come back in with your honey. Just keep blending till you're happy with it. A little bit more white, but you'll see how this paint is so wet that they just want to blend right in together. And do the same here on the outside. I'm going to pull some white, and we're going to cover a lot of this up with her little wreath, right? So we're going to keep this as a little shadow in there. Just going to darken it up. I'm just going between my two dark chocolates, and I'm pulling that brush and just letting those colors blend. Okay. Now we're going to come up here and do the neck. Right under her face, we want that really dark, so we'll get some of that bittersweet chocolate, make her dark right there. And I'm going to get honey and just start blending that out and down the neck. Those two colors will blend. And then I'm going to grab some white, bring that down. Don't worry too much about the neck. We're going to put her little wreath on there soon, right? If you get too much paint, just like I just did, wipe some off and just keep pulling that paint down and around, right? So it's not perfect, but it looks cute. So down in here now, we've base coated that really light. I'm going to get a little bit of honey, a little bit of white. And this is where we are just going to press the brush, pull and flick. Press, pull, flick. And we're just going to create little hair strokes. I've got some white and some honey on this brush, and I'm just flicking the brush, lifting up at the outside, at the end of my stroke to create those little flicks of what look like hair. Okay, so you can let it dry. You can just keep you can keep going lighter, lighter. Just grabbing little bits of white and loading my brush more often as I need to. Okay, so I'm going to come up here now. We're going to come back up to her head, and we are going to clean our brush while we have this. Let's clean our brush, and we're going to work on our cheek and our ear. So we need a brush that is soft, small. This is one it's not an old brush, but this will work. It's nice and fluffy. We only need a tiny little bit of our pink, right? So I'm going to just put a little bit of pink right over there on the side. I'm going to dip this brush just lightly, very lightly into that. And I'm going to knock a lot of that right back off. Okay, it's going to be almost dry. So I'm going to just very lightly tap some of that pink right under here, under the eyeball, to create a little pink cheek. And I'm just going to keep tapping it And you'll see this is dry brushing the pink on, just giving her a sweet little pink cheek there right under the eye. Right, and I'm going to switch back over to my small brush, my round brush, and I'm going to fill in the ear with that pink. So we're just going to grab the pink, excuse me. We're going to fill in, just going to come down the bottom here with a little point. I am just filling in with the pink while it's wet. Coming up and grabbing some of my white. Just like we did down here, I'm going to start at the bottom of the ear, and I'm going to pull up and out, up through the ear. I'm just pulling up, lifting, pull up and lift. You'll see that it's going to start blending with the pink that you've put in there. And it's going to create that look of little flicks of hair, right? So you can bring them out, flick it out into the ear, and give her just a really hairy little ear. It's just adorable, in my opinion. Now that I'm going to come right over here now, we're going to base in our antlers. I know I kind of move around a bit, but now that we've got our bittersweet chocolate color out, we're going to dip into that with our small brush. And we are just going to fill in our antlers. Take your time. You can always work a little bit at a time. Come back and watch the video. So we're just going to fill in her little antlers. Both sides. I'm going to work from top down. And I'm working quickly because, as I said, I like to paint wet on wet. But we can always go back and recoat it with the chocolate brown with the bittersweet chocolate brown if it dries. Now this antler you can see on top of the head. So we want to fill that in and just fill in the lines there. Right? There we go. It is drying very quickly. We do want to keep it fairly wet. So if it starts to dry on you, just come in and add another coat of that same color. Okay, and work little bits. I'm going to dip into, I'm going to use fawn, and right at the, I'm going to, oh, look what I just did, but it's all right. We'll fix it. At the top of our antler, I'm going to lightly go along with fawn. So at the top, the outside edge, the top and outside edge, and we're just going to do that for each little antler point. Okay, I'm going to leave a highlight right here and highlight here. And now we just go in with our brush lightly. If those two colors are still wet, and we're just blending them together. We can lighten it up a little bit more. I'm making a mess with my hand here. We can lighten that even more with just little bits of white. Just use the tip of your brush, pull that in through your brown. If you want that really blended look. Okay, just the difference that made. And that's really all that you need to do for the antlers. So we're going to do the same on this side. I'm not going to worry about that little spot. I can put a Christmas ball there. That's why I said I think I'll wing my Christmas balls because my Christmas lights. I had a feeling that I would mess it up with my hands, moving quickly and not making sure my paint is dry in between coats. So I'm going to do my edges. the tips. I'm going to bring it down. You can always come back in with your darker color and blend those together. You've got that fawn there as a in-between color between those three colors. And through here, you're just going to put some like little streaks. So we're just going to use the dark, the light, and the mid-range to just really add. And I'm going to follow around the curve of her antler there and pull up. That's really all you need to do to get the look of the antlers. Okay, so now we're going to clean our brush again, and we're going to come in and we are going to base coat the eye. Come in here and coat the eye. I'm just going to grab some white. And I'm just going to put a nice little coat of white here on that inner part of my eye where the iris meets the pupil. If you're working big, go ahead and use the double load method. You can blend the two colors of blue together. I still have some of my dark blue from when we did background. And now I'm going to keep this to the outside here. I'm going to add that dark blue to the outer edge of the eye. And just like we did on the rest of the deer, I'm going to now just let my brush do the work and blend the white and that really deep blue together. I can always come in and pick up more deep blue. It's just going slow, using the tip of your brush and blending. Okay, and believe it or not, that's that. That part of the eye is done. Done, done, done. Okay, so now we're going to move on. Can you believe we're just going to grab our black. So if you don't have your black out, just go ahead and get yourself some black on your palette. But I have some black here. So I'm going to work from the top down with the black. I'm going to take just enough black on my brush and use the tip of the brush to come in here. And we are going to just outline the pupil and fill in. Okay, don't worry about your highlight areas of the eye. We'll go back in and put those back in when this dries. Okay. Just use the tip of that brush if you're working small and go slow. Same. I'm going to come in here now. I'm going to outline her nose with the tip of the brush. Fill in. Simple, simple. Okay, and now I'm going to come down to the hooves of her feet. Outline and fill in. This one looks a little bit different than the piece, but it's okay. No two reindeers are going to be the same. We are rounding up all of the reindeer today, and I cannot wait to see what you guys create. I would love it if you tag me on social using the hashtag Reindeer Roundup so that I can come see your creations, and we can round up all of the reindeer all over social media, um, and just really brighten each other's days up as we head into this holiday season, right? So now I've blended, all of my hooves are now filled in. I'm going to take this brush. If you have a lot of black left on it, wipe it off. All right, because then we're going to we're going to tip that right into the white again. And we want to just come in now. These are dry, these are still wet. So I'm going to put a little line right in the middle, down the middle of that hoof. And I'm going to put a line right down the middle of that hoof. Okay, I'm going to put another line here at the edge. And then I'm going to take that brush and just start blending that black and that white together. See how it just, you can come in with the very tip again, add a little bit more white at your edges. But as long as your two colors are still wet, the blending is just so much easier, right? But the black will eat up the white very quickly. We want to do this side also. And just let that brush blend the colors together. Now, if your black is dried, grab a little bit and just like we did with the browns, sometimes it's a dance with the paint. We have to dance between the two colors. I'm going to add a little highlight on the edge over there and let the colors blend a bit. We just want that little tiny bit of a highlight to separate the feet. So we're going to do the same here. I'm going to give this a really quick coat of black, very, very thin, just so that I know it's still slightly damp. Now I'm going to grab some white. Same here, right down the center, right down the center. And we're going to do this right here. And we're going to get this right here. And we're just going to kind of blend. See how I just pushed some of that white off? I can pick up some more black. And I just want to blend that white a little bit, but I want to have a nice little crisp line right in the middle so you can see where the hooves sort of round. Okay, so I'm going to blend this one a bit too, but I want to make sure in between this front foot and the back foot, there's a nice dark shadow there. So we can highlight the edge of this hoof a little bit more with white. Okay, and the hooves are pretty much done. So now we're going to come up here to the nose. I'm going to clean off my brush. Clean it off pretty good. And then make sure your eye and your nose are dry. Tip of this brush, tip it in the white paint. Okay, top of the nose, I'm going to drop the brush, press it just a little, pull back and lift it to the point. I'm going to add a little dot right there, and we can blend it just a bit if we want. Okay, same here. I'm going to drop this brush, make a little bit of a circle or an oval. We're making like a comma, so we can fill this and pull this down. See how there's a little comma there? And we can close it, right? Simple, simple. In between the black and the blue, we're going to put our little highlight oval back in. So just make a little oval, fill it in. I'm going to make another little dot below. and the eye is done there. Okay, so we're done there, done there. We want to use the white. Now we can come in, we can add some of her little spots. Spots do not have to be perfectly round. You can use the spots from the tracer, or feel free to I'm just tapping little spots in, half of spots here around her edge, around, the side of her head. I can make some triangular shaped spots, but we're just going to make some spots. Some of them are going to just be half because they're the ones that are going to the other side of her head. And we can tap in some smaller spots. We're going to come down and do that back down here on her rump. Right? So some will be half. We can just tap a few little spots. Right? They could be like little U's, little triangles, teardrops, more square than they are circle. Just add a few little dots. But don't make them perfect. There's no perfect. No perfect is allowed. Right? So she's almost done. The only thing that we have to do now is add her little eyelashes. So clean brush, dipped into my black paint. I'm going to make sure that my paint is thin enough, and I'm going to roll the brush in it back to a nice little point. I'm going to follow the edge of the eye, right? So I'm just going to use the tip. Come up, press just slightly, lift to the point, and lift up and flick it. It's that flick that gives you that really sweet little eyelash. So I'm just going to come through. You can really round it a little bit. Just fix them. Right? Don't be afraid to put just a few little really teeny tiny ones in there. And we're going to do the same at the bottom. I'm going to rotate. I find it easier to flick back towards myself for some reason. So I'm going to start right here under the eye, right about right here. And I'm just going to lightly flick little lines out and down. The lighter your little lines are, the more delicate her eyelashes will look, right? So then we're just going to take a little bit of black on the tip of that brush again. Pull in her little smile. There you go. There she is in all her glory, right? So she is done at this point as far as just being the deer. We're going to go ahead now and we are going to add some greenery around her. I'm going to show you how to do some greenery. I'm using a round brush. I'm just grabbing a little, it's a little bit bigger, right? We don't want to get really delicate and too like crazy with the greenery. At least I don't. Right, so where's this? Hold on. So we've got our greens, our dark green, our Hauser green, and I've got my Hauser dark green. Where did my Hauser light green go? It hid from me. Hold on. I just have to run and get my Hauser light green. Don't go anywhere, guys. All right, so I've got my Hauser light green. my Hauser dark green. Okay, and white. 3 colors. This is just going to be so technical. It's going to blow your mind. And a round brush. Okay. If you need to like envision a little circle there, or, you know, I'm just going to envision that. Maybe I'll take the white paint and I'm just going to envision my circle is going to come out and around. So I'm just going to paint my little circle. There's my wreath. Okay. My brush. Give me a little sip of drink. My mouth is getting very dry. This comes together really quickly, guys. Really, really, really quickly. So we're going to take the brush. We're going to dip it and roll it. We're going to get a good bit of this Hauser light green on the brush. Okay, so technical. Now we're going to take that and we're going to dip it right into the white paint. So we have that little tip of white. Okay, we're going to take the brush straight up and down and we're going to press it. See how it's pressed? We're going to pull it back to the center and lift. And we're just going to repeat that. Press, wiggle, pull it back and lift. Honestly, that's all there is to it. Press, pull it back and lift. Press, pull it back and lift. Okay, we can get in there and throw one on top. We're just going to keep working our way around. Green and white. I'm going to start down here, pull back. I'm just going to work my way around just like this. You'll see there's a method to my madness. I'm going to drop one here, pull it. I'm going to drop one here and pull it. So I'm making little teardrop shapes. Some white. Press, pull, lift. Press, pull, lift. I'm just working my way willy-nilly around the wreath. I don't want them all perfectly going in the same direction. I want some with more green, some with more white, and I want to overlap them, but I'm doing that same stroke. I'm pulling. Ugh. I'm dropping the brush, pressing it, pulling it back to the point, and lifting. Press, pull back and lift, and overlap. We don't want them all going in the same direction. We can do tiny ones. We can do big ones. We can come in and grab some of this other green and go over and add even more interest, right? Get some small ones in there. We're just pressing, pulling, lifting. Those 3 colors, God bless you, those 3 colors are going to start blending together and doing the work for you, right? So little ones, big ones. It's really, honestly, it is that simple. I'm going to move back to my other brush because it's a bit thinner, right? So I'm going to take this brush now, the one I've been using. Make sure it's got like a nice little point on it. And I'm going to dip into that dark Hauser green. And now I'm just going to come wherever I feel like it. I'm just going to flick out just like we did for eyelashes. We're going to flick out a line and we're going to bring little lines stemming off of that to create that look of little pine needles. We don't need it to be perfect. If it blends with the other colors, all the better. right? So we're just flicking those little lines. Just that look of pine sticking out. Don't forget to have some going towards the center. Just little lines. You can add some white in with those as well. Don't be afraid to just get in there and add those bits of pine. Now, if there's spots in there that you're not sold on, completely sold on, just let it dry because we're going to come back in and add our berries. But first now, we're going to flip her over. We're going to flip her around. No, actually, I'm just going to work this way and hope that I don't put my hand in it. We're going to switch back, switch gears now, and we are going to put in, I just made a mess. That is nothing new. Nothing new, guys, right? I'm going to get my black paint with my little smaller liner, whatever the smallest round or liner that you have. And if you've used the tracer to put your Christmas lights in, that's fine. Just make sure when you put in, like some of these lights are going to be behind the antlers, like this one is going to be behind. And then it's going to loop around the front of the antler here. Right, so you can just follow the tracer. Doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm just going to do this. I'm going to do like little curvy V's. I'm going to make my little loop. I'll throw a little light right there. We're going to come up. Let's see. We're going to come over here, go around the front, up around the back, over. But see, you can have fun with this. You don't have to follow the tracer exact, but it is there if you want to. So I'm going to go right over the front of the antler here. See how some go behind, some go in front of the antlers. And I'm going to throw a Christmas ball here, or a light here. And then we'll end it. And they don't have to be perfect. Make them thick, make them thin. Okay. And over here is a little rectangle for the plug. While I've got all that black, I'm going to tap into my white. I'm going to make a line here with the white, a line at the top, and then I'm going to add my little plugs. So the black and the white are going to mix to create that gray. Okay. I'm also going to come up wherever I'm going to paint a ball. I'm going to make like a little smile. I want a little bit of white on the brush. I'm going to make that two little smiles. So it's a tiny little bit of black, a tiny little bit of white. I'm going to do this as 2 little rainbows. Okay. So wherever I'm going to put a light, I'm going to do 2 little lines, and having the white and the black on there at the same time, it will do the shading for you. I'm going to throw one right here. 1, 2, and 1, 2. Just 2 little curved lines, and they don't have to be perfect. Okay, I'm going to clean it. Now, this is where you use, in this one, I used that sea breeze color. We used pink. I used a yellow. This is where you can get creative and use whatever colors that you have on hand. I'm going to use the sea breeze and I'm going to use the pink. Right? I don't need that much pink, but it's there. So this is where I'm going to come in. And let's come over here. I'm going to tap a tip on that bulb there. I'm going to pull it and pull out wide. Start in that same spot, pull out wide and curve back in. Then you get the balls that have the little tip at the edge. So I'm going to go green, pink, green. But feel free to use your tracer if you don't feel comfortable doing them on your own. We'll do pink, and I'm going to finish off with another green. And you guessed it, while that's still wet, we're going to tap a little bit of white on our brush, and on each side of that light, we're going to blend a little highlight in. You can leave it as bright as you want it, or you can pull that brush through and blend it as much as you want it blended. And we're going to clean it and repeat those steps with the pink. So I'm going to grab my pink. I'm going to make my bulb. Let's do another one here. And see how this one is just, no two are ever going to be the same. I could paint this 100 times and they're not going to be the same. We may end up coming back and doing this painting again in an even more simplified and fun style that we could do in less than an hour. That would be something that would look great on a door hanger. So now at this point, we're going to move on and we're going to finish this up. The last step is putting our berries on. And of course, I don't have my red. Grab my red. Use whatever color red that you might have. I'm just going to grab this one because I have more room to blend. I don't need that much paint, but I want you to be able to see what I'm doing, right? So I'm going to come back and get my round brush. Make sure we're centered here so you can see. I'm going to come in here and grab, I'm going to use a good, remember when I said in the beginning, like nice, tight little, tiny little strokes? Now I'm just going to get big old globs of paint and I'm going to come in here and drop in little circles, little berry clusters. You can do clusters of 3. Just do a couple. I like to do some single berries. Just do a couple at a time. I'm going to do a single here. And then we'll do a cluster of 3. Do a couple at a time that you feel comfortable. You can make them big. You can make them small. But she's kind of fun. Right? So while they're still wet, I'm going to wipe some of my red off. And I'm going to dip into that white. You guessed it. And right around the edges of the berries, I'm going to come in with that white. And I'm just going to blend that, right? When I pull my brush through, that red and the white will blend to create my highlight. If it gets a little too light, You can come back in with your dark and drop some of the darker color there. But you're just going to work your way all the way around the piece, doing the same thing. Just bring some highlights. I like to do each side and come in and blend. You can add like a little bit of a really white bit to like the tips of the berries from where they're picking up that little glimmer of light. But I'm basically just going around each outline of the berries and then letting the paint blend under the brush. I can come back in and add those little tiny circle highlights of white. Just finish it off. Keep going. Do your little 3 berry clusters. 1, 2, 3. Let's do a nice big single berry right up here. Right? And then we're going to outline with our white and blend. White, white, white. Push some of it off, blend. Right? If it gets too light, add some of your dark back. And then add your little tiny dots of highlight to your berries, and it's all done. Guys, I hope that you really like this little reindeer painting. Absolutely love her. I know she's kind of a little bit more than a beginner level, but you can do this as simply or get as creative as you want with her. I cannot wait to see what you come up with, the colors that you choose, the backgrounds that you make. This will be great. I will show you when I finish it. After she's all dry, I'm going to go ahead and put some ribbon, maybe a little bow to hang her with. If you would like to get this exact, see, look, they're not thin. They're nice and thick. I've just coated it with white paint. These are the birch tags. I've linked them above that you can get from Not Just Frames. And make your own little reindeer tags. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know below in the comments, and be sure to tag me on social media using the hashtag Reindeer Roundup. I want to come see all of your reindeer. I hope that you found this fun, relaxing, enjoying. Let's kick off the holiday season, and I will see you soon. I love you guys.